outrageously mispriced. These are 7 players, quarterbacks, tight ends that you should absolutely be targeting in your dynasty startups as those kick off here in June, maybe even into late July. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. But here we go. 7 outrageously mispriced players that you should target. Starts right now. And the first player is Justin Herbert. And while it's true that Justin Herbert has lost more offensive weapons than just about any quarterback in the NFL, his value has gone down far too much. And even in a Greg Roman run-first offense that the Chargers project to run, Herbert's going to have opportunities to throw the ball. And the big narrative is, okay, Justin Herbert's lost all these weapons, but let's examine those weapons for a moment. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett, and Austin Eckler are now playing elsewhere. Williams was hurt for a good portion of that time that he played with Herbert, so it's almost like he wasn't even there for a good portion of the time. So Justin Herbert's more than used to not having Mike Williams available. Eckler looked like he aged quite a bit last year, and the teams replaced him with viable options in Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Kamani Vidal, who's got a lot of upside. One could argue that this unit in the backfield at running back has improved overall, at least the depth of the unit. The Chargers also added Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst to replace Gerald Everett. I don't see that as a big deal. But then we get to Keenan Allen, and this is the big one, which does hurt. However, the Chargers addressed this need in the NFL draft by selecting Ladd McConkey early in round 2. Heck, they traded up to get him. Overall, the downgrade of the weapons in Los Angeles is being overblown by the general public, especially when considering that Herbert is one of the better talents at the quarterback position. Now that we've established that the weapons aren't nearly as bad as the general public seems to think, let's examine Herbert's production as a player throughout his career. Since he was drafted in 2020, Justin Herbert has never finished below quarterback 15 in fantasy points per game. He also has a quarterback 2 in fantasy points per game on his resume in 2021. Currently, Herbert is ranked as the quarterback 10 according to Keep Trade Cut and the player number 16 overall, thus making him an early second-round pick in a 12-team league. And he's ranked behind Jordan Love. I don't know about you. Let me know what you think in the comments. I would trade Jordan Love to get Justin Herbert every day of the week and twice on Sunday. But again, let me know what you think in the comments. Let's talk a little Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence seems to be getting a lot of hate, and I'm not really sure why, because there's nothing wrong with consistency, and that's exactly what Trevor Lawrence has given fantasy gamers over the past 2 seasons. The problem with the consistent production is that it hasn't been to the level that people expected. Many fantasy and dynasty gamers expected and drafted Lawrence to be a top 5 to 8 quarterback, depending on where you took him in your startup. The past 2 seasons, Lawrence has finished as the quarterback 12 and the quarterback 13, respectively, in fantasy points per game. However, there are some signs that Lawrence could be a lot more productive in the future. The first is the amount of volume Lawrence is going to dish out from a passing perspective. Last season, Lawrence threw the ball 564 times, which was number 8 amongst quarterbacks. He threw 71 deep balls. That was number 5 amongst quarterbacks. And the Jaguars ran their offense at warp speed. They ranked number 2 with Lawrence under center in pace of play when put up against other NFL teams, according to Player Profiler. Lawrence is also a quarterback that's going to provide a rushing floor. Last season, Lawrence ranked number 9 amongst quarterbacks in carries, number 9 in rushing yards, and number 7 in rushing touchdowns amongst quarterbacks. The Jaguars added Brian Thomas Jr. in round 1 of the NFL draft, signed Gabriel Davis to go with Christian Kirk, Evan Engram, and Travis Etienne as the primary weapons for this Jacksonville offense. This tells me that the Jaguars want to be a team that stretches the field with those 2 burners, Thomas Jr. and Davis, on the outside of 3 wide receiver sets. At the speed the Jaguars play on offense, that is going to be a good thing for fantasy football. And currently, Lawrence is ranked as the quarterback 13, player number 28. Oh my, how the mighty have fallen, according to Keep Trade Cut. At that price, you're drafting him at his floor, and you should be all in on Trevor Lawrence. Draft capital is the only thing that is holding back Brock Purdy. In reality, Purdy should be closer to a first-round pick in a dynasty startup draft, a superflex, than a third-round startup pick, which is where he's currently ranked. Last season, Purdy ranked as the quarterback 6 overall and the quarterback 6 in fantasy points per game. Purdy also ranked highly in many of the metrics we care about at the quarterback position. Last season, Purdy ranked at number 1 in yards per attempt, number 3 in fantasy points per dropback, number 1 in deep ball completion percentage, number 1 in true passer rating, number 1 in QBR, and number 1 in expected points added. I mean, just imagine if CJ Stroud would have put up those numbers. Probably be the number 1 quarterback overall in Dynasty right now, but he didn't. CJ Stroud finishes as the quarterback 11, whatever. CJ Stroud's still really good, but my point is Brock Purdy's also really good, and he's being devalued because he was drafted as Mr. Irrelevant. That's a thing that's happening right now. And the perception is, oh, well, the weapons in San Francisco are awesome and the weapons are making the quarterback, which is, I don't think, altogether true. The only hang-up for Purdy is the efficiency within the 49ers offense, which at times could lead to a lack of passing volume. Last season, Purdy ranked number 20 in pass attempts, number 22 in deep ball attempts. The 49ers also ranked number 32 in team pass plays per game and number 31 in pace of play amongst NFL teams. The critical question we need to ask ourselves when evaluating what is Brock Purdy's ceiling is, will the 49ers crank up the passing game in 2024? And what we do know is the 49ers drafted Ricky Pearsall in round 1 of the NFL draft, thus signaling that they might trade one of Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel. However, to this point, both Samuel and Ayuk remain on the roster. The 49ers also still have George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, who are excellent pass catchers in their own right. If the 49ers elect to keep both Samuel and Ayuk in 2024, it means they will have to run more 3 wide receiver sets to get their first-round pick on the field. This should mean an increased passing volume for one of the league's most efficient offenses. And I think there's a factor to this too, that Kyle Shanahan wants to get over the hump. He wants to win a Super Bowl, and perhaps he feels with the selection of Ricky Pearsall that they need to throw the ball more and they need to open up the offense, and Purdy is the quarterback that he's never had that can do that in San Francisco. Currently, Purdy is ranked as the quarterback 14 and player number 32, which would put him in round 3 of Dynasty startups securely in a 12-team superflex league. And at that price, Purdy is a player you must target in Dynasty startup drafts. Drafting Michael Penix Jr. is like drafting a 2025 first-round pick. It comes down to that. I mean, likely Penix is not going to play in 2024, and perhaps the Falcons will stick with Kirk Cousins, much in the same way the Packers stuck with Aaron Rodgers. Heck, they referenced it on draft night. This is a move that it's very similar to what the Packers did, even though it wasn't really. I mean, they signed. The difference is you had Aaron Rodgers in place, and they signed Kirk Cousins, which they didn't have to do in the offseason if their plan was to take a quarterback. But anyway, I digress. Penix has the draft capital that we're looking for in fantasy football, and he has the college production to be a solid NFL quarterback. Now he gets a chance to learn from an established veteran before he is rushed out onto the field. Penix is currently ranked as the quarterback 23, player number 91 in Keep Trade Cuts rankings. That puts him in round 8. And I don't know about you, but once you get to the 7th, 8th, 9th round, it's darn near impossible. In fact, I'll go so far as to say it is impossible. If you had a trade in your Dynasty Startup League where somebody traded their first-round pick away for an 8th-round pick, that's very, very unlikely. And that's basically what you're doing with Michael Penix, because we know that he's going to hold his value until he gets on the field, and whether he plays well or doesn't play well, he's always going to be a top 10 pick. He's got the draft capital, and he's going to play snaps for the Atlanta Falcons at some point in his career. We just don't know when. And as the years roll on, he's like a perfect pick right now for a year 1 punt or a productive struggle build, because his value is going to hold water very, very well for a round 8 pick in a Dynasty startup. Let's move on to the tight end position. Last season, Evan Engram ranked as the tight end 2 overall and the tight end 4 in fantasy points per game. He earned a career high 143 targets, which ranked number 1 amongst tight ends. And if he would have caught more touchdowns, which he only caught 4 touchdowns, he probably would have been the tight end 1 overall. Engram could finish as the tight end 1 overall. He has that kind of upside in an offense that's going to be good with Trevor Lawrence. We talked about Trevor Lawrence a little bit earlier in that pace of play, which we'll reference again here in a bit. And as mentioned above, the Jaguars lost Calvin Ridley and decided to replace him with Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. Those outside threats should open up the middle of the field for Christian Kirk and Evan Engram. All of it adds up to Engram smashing yet again for fantasy football. And currently, Engram is being drafted as the tight end 10 overall and player number 118, according to Keep Trade Cut. There is no doubt because Engram is closing in on being 30 years old. That's a factor here. But tight ends like Engram age differently, especially receiving tight ends. That's what he is. He's a receiving tight end who's super athletic. And because of this fact, this price seems a little ageist to me, as Engram likely has 2 to 3 good years of production left in an offense that ranked number 6 in team pass plays per game, and like we mentioned above, number 2 in pace of play amongst NFL teams, according to Player Profiler. Also, Engram has played in all 17 games in back-to-back seasons, showing that the injury concerns of years ago are a thing of the past. Drafting Luke Musgrave is as simple as wanting cheap exposure to the Green Bay Packers offense. That's really what this boils down to. In the 2023 NFL Draft, the Packers used a second-round pick on Musgrave. Musgrave battled through multiple injuries in the 2023 season and mostly played through them until a lacerated kidney sidelined him in Week 11. There isn't much to go on here, especially considering Tucker Kraft is right behind him, and the Packers used a round 3 pick on him in the same draft class, and he'll get opportunities as well, Kraft that is. But Musgrave has the athleticism we want in an offense we want pieces of. Additionally, albeit this is a small sample size, which you take with a grain of salt, Musgrave ranked number 1 in target separation amongst tight ends, according to Player Profiler, when he was on the field. Jordan Love, the quarterback, ranked number 5 amongst quarterbacks in pass attempts last season, and the Packers offense ranked number 16 in pace of play with Love under center in his first full year as a starter. It wouldn't shock me if the Packers decide to crank up the pace in Love's second full year as a starting quarterback, which will mean more targets for players like Luke Musgrave. Currently, Musgrave is ranked as the tight end 17 and player number 158, according to Keep Trade Cut. And at that price, I am in on Luke Musgrave. We're going to end the show today with an Iowa Hawkeye, a former Hawkeye, in Noah Fant. Gone is big bad Shane Waldron and his many tight ends. Enter Noah Fant onto the stage alone with only Pharaoh Brown, newly drafted AJ Barner in round 4 of the 2024 NFL Draft, and Brady Russell behind him on the depth chart. And I'd wager that Fant is the unquestioned tight end 1 in Seattle now, and it's really not even close. To this point, Fant has been a colossal disappointment, especially for fantasy gamers, dynasty gamers who bought into the hype early when he was drafted in the first round by the Denver Broncos. However, there is value to be gained by using that spurned energy, the energy that dynasty gamers have when they've been burned by players and they say, oh, I'll never draft that guy again. I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel that way about Noah Fant, but the reality is Fant is still just 26 years old and possesses one of the more impressive athletic profiles for a tight end. Sure, he's going to have to compete against DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba for targets, but Fant could provide spike weeks on an offense that did rank number 4 in pace of play last year when Geno Smith was healthy. Currently, and this is the best part, Fant is basically free in dynasty drafts. Currently, Fant is ranked as the tight end 28. Yes, that's right, tight end 28 and player number 241, according to Keep Trade Cut. And at that price, I'll be taking him in the back half of my dynasty startup drafts in 2024 all day long. Thank you so much for watching the video. Don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.